Hello and welcome. This week we are joined by the amazingly talented and hilarious funny writer and comedian Vannessa Jackson. We sit down to talk about Aziz Ansari's Intimate Moments for a Sensual Evening. Pour a glass of wine because it's time for Comedy Album Book Club. Thanks for joining me today. It's me, Matt, your host. I have an amazing guest this week. You may know her from the New York comedy scene. You may know her from her time working at Tiger Beat or Black Lady Sketch Show, or even her work as a sketch writer on SNL. It is the incredibly funny Vannessa Jackson. She decided to talk about Aziz Ansari's Intimate Moments for a Sensual Evening. Yeah, classic album that is incredibly hilarious. We get into the time capsule of comedy, the process of just being funny, and the amazingness that is Aziz. Now, as I said, she works on SNL, which requires a lot of concentration, which is something that our sponsors, Magic Mind, will help you with. I've been doing the program for a little over 7 days now, and it's really helped with my focus, helped with my energy, and it's been just a terrific experience. It genuinely has become a part of my morning ritual. Get into the office, I fizz up some water, I mix it in, and it's a nice little berry blast of energy right at the start of the day, with like 100% of your daily dose of vitamin C and vitamin D in one bottle. Now, if you are interested in trying it out, we have a limited offer that you can do right now. It's 48% off your first subscription, or 20% off your one-time purchase using the code KINDA20 at checkout. If you go to www.magicmind.com/kinda. And that will get you going. I don't know if it would get you through a meeting with Lorne Michaels. I did not ask Vannessa that. That is literally a thing of my nightmares. I never mentioned that, but I had recurring nightmares of being a writer on SNL and never having a sketch ready. So maybe we'll have Vannessa back and I can tell her that terrible, terrible recurring nightmare that haunts me to this day, even though I am too old to write for SNL. But hey, one can dream. You never know. You never know. But thanks for tuning in. This is Vannessa Jackson, and we're talking about Aziz Ansari's Intimate Moments for a Sensual Evening.
This next bit I wanted to do, it's something a little different. I played a character in this movie, Funny People, named Randy, who is a stand-up comedian. And when I did the movie, I wrote like some jokes for Randy, and I enjoyed doing them, and so I thought it'd be fun to do a little bit of Randy in the special. So we're gonna do a little bit where it's basically like, what would Randy do if he had a special? So give me a second, I'll be right back.
Second set of skin, y'all better break it out, cause we finna burn it off, y'all. Y'all ain't seen shit like this since you turned around, saw your mama's vagina, and watched yourself getting born. Let's get it started! you got bank accounts, cause he's spreading out large amounts. They call him Randy. Straight Randy, y'all.
What's up? My name is Randy with 8 A's. If y'all are ready to laugh your dicks off, let me hear you say yeah. I said, if y'all are ready to laugh your dicks off, let me hear you say yeah. All right, then it's Randy time. Let's do this shit. First joke. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit.
What's up, Randy?
It's time for another one of Randy's crazy fuck stories, aka a fuck tale. If y'all want to hear a fuck tale, let me go fuck tales. Ooh, ooh. Since you asked so nicely, I'll tell you one. I was hooking up with this girl recently in a fucking hot tub. And we're sitting there doing our thing, and it's going great. And eventually she's like, Randy, 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 will you go down on me? And I was like, yes, I can definitely do that. But here's the thing, y'all. We're in a hot tub. So I had to do that shit underwater. So I hold my breath and I go down there. I'm just swimming around, looking for the pussy, 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 looking for the pussy. Bam! I find it. I start doing my thing. It's going great. But eventually I'm like, damn, I can't hold my breath that much longer. I gotta come up for air. But this girl holds my head down under the water. That ain't cool, ladies. This guy knows what I'm talking about. This guy definitely knows what I'm talking about. But I came up for air and things are fine. But I kind of wish I would have drowned. Because that would have been the most baller death of all time. It'd be like, hey, Randy's parents, there's been a terrible cunnilingus accident. Yeah, Randy was eating pussy underwater. I know, it's awesome, but he's dead. I had this awesome headstone and be like, here lies Randy, he died while eating pussy. And then I have my handprint right there, and you walk by, the handprint will give you a high five. Ba-bam! 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 Fellas, you ever been in this situation? You got a girl back at your place, and she's down. You're all excited. You're like, I'm gonna get my fuck on. I'm gonna get my fuck on. I'm gonna get my fuck on tonight. Yes, I'm gonna get my fuck on. I'm gonna get my fuck on. I'm gonna get my fuck on tonight. Yes, I'm gonna get my fuck on. I'm gonna get my fuck on. I'm gonna get my fuck on tonight. And she's like, Randy, stop dancing. And you do. You stop dancing, then you head to the bedroom and you're about to set it off. And what happens every time you get to this moment, fellas? What happens every time you get to this moment? You gotta take a huge shit! So you run in the bathroom and start playing the game that Randy likes to call Make a Lot of Noise So It Don't Sound Like You Taking a Shit! You cutting on the sink in the shower. She's like, Randy, what's going on in there? Nothing. I'm just brushing my teeth and taking a shower at the same time. But that's not enough noise either. So you gotta run in the kitchen. Next thing you know, you blending carrots and celeries and tomatoes. She's like, Randy, what are you doing in there? Bitch, I'm making you a smoothie. And you go back to the bedroom. And what does she say? What does she always say? Randy, 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 I gotta go pee. No! You gon' smell my shit! I was thinking about this the other day. You know what must be crazy? Getting your dick sucked in an igloo. How you supposed to stay hard when it's so cold? It'd be like Eskimo Randy, Eskimo Randy, Eskimo version of Randy. Can I give you a blowjob? I'd be like, no, give me a blanket, my dick's cold.
Nigga, knock that shit off. It's too cold.
Fellas, do you know how to get your girl to do the crazy shit? I mean, the crazy shit? It's simple. You can't ask her in your normal voice. If I got a girl back in my place, I'm like, hey, let's have sex in my kitchen. She'd be like, no, Randy, no. But if I ask her, in my smooth, sexy R&B voice, if I'm like, girl, I'm saying, girl, I wanna fuck you in my kitchen tonight, by my fridge, by my oven, by my Foreman grill. She'll be like, damn, Randy, let's do that shit now. Next thing you know, you fucking and making chicken.
That's right, Randy fucking and making chicken since 86, bitches.
You guys like impressions? All right, this is my impression of me, Randy, getting a blowjob at an IKEA. Excuse me, can you tell me where the lighting and home furniture? Whoa!
They call that shit a oofsk.
This is my impression of me, Randy, getting a blowjob at a Whole Foods. Excuse me, are those the organic strawberries or are those... Whoa!
She gave you a fair trade blowjob.
Yeah. You guys now. Anybody shout out a suggestion, I'll do my impression of me, Randy, getting my dick sucked there. Go. Six Flags, here we go. Excuse me, can you tell me where I can find the thing where where you roll the, what is it called? Ski ball!
You must be this tall to ride Randy's dick. Randy.
Keep him coming, keep him coming. What else? What else? Funeral? Oh, you trying to stump Randy, huh? You don't think Randy gets his dick sucked at funerals? You about to get dealt with. This is my impression of me, Randy, getting my dick sucked at a fucking funeral. Hey, I just wanted to say that, this is really hard for me to say this, but I just wanted to say that I'm really sorry for your loss! Thank you guys so much! My name's Randy, y'all! Good night!
Make some fucking noise for Randy. Straight up doing it to you every
Get
time.
that money!
Hello, welcome to Comedy Album Book Club. I am joined by Vannessa Jackson. She is a stand-up comedian based out of New York. She's also a writer for Saturday Night Live, Black Lady Sketch Show, A Little Late with Lily Singh, and formerly Tiger Beat, which must have been bonkers. That must have been a wild job.
It was so much fun. It was funny because it was like not in 1985, so it was in like 2016 when they were kind of going like down, I guess. I don't even know if they still have a print edition. It was like big. They were figuring out whether they were still going to do print or not print when I was there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, a lot of just reliving my young adult years, which is cool.
And my sister, and I talk about comedy stuff, she's like usually like, oh yeah, whatever. When I tell her that I spoke with the person who wrote for Tiger Beat, she's gonna lose her mind.
They're kindred spirits. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just wanted to talk about intimate moments for a sensual evening, Aziz Ansari's 2010 album. So what inspired you to choose this album?
Aziz was like one of the very first comics that I became like obsessed with when I started being interested in comedy. Mm-hmm. And this album, I think, is like one of the very first that I listened to. I used to have like a long commute into work. And so I listened to this album, and it's like, even to this day, it still makes me laugh super hard. And like when you're around so much comedy, sometimes you become a little desensitized to it. You'll be one of those things where you're like, that's a funny joke. But yeah, I still like laugh out loud listening to his material. So yeah, it's one of my all-time faves.
One of the things I loved about this is there's just, and I mean, Aziz in general has like this sort of joyousness to his delivery. You know, like there's this energy, and that's all through this album. Like there's bits where he's just like sing song kind of delivery, and then just this childish glee at times, which is really amazing.
He finds a way, I think, to do what a lot of really great comedians do, which is just use different ways of talking and different, like fast and then slow and different voices, and he's really, really good at like just great writer too. Just wrote all that in his material. But I agree.
One of the things that I really enjoy about this is how like he'll just play with words a lot, like just in really smart ways. Like just he'll sort of just come at them from these like weird angles. So I love how he plays with words at times. Like there's that bit about the Simple Man cruise, where he's talking about the guy who's sort of using sort of old timey colloquialism, like you swing a cat and you'll hit a good guitarist. So it's like he knows how to find the funny within language really well.
100%. He's good at like also just. Obviously, comedy is all about the element of surprise, but like going places that you didn't think you were going to go with it, I think is amazing.
Do you have a favorite bit or a favorite joke from the album that really resonates with you?
It's pretty controversial, but I always used to love his R. Kelly stuff. I think just that closer is so, I feel like, and he addresses it a little because it was back in 2010. So people were like aware, but not, it wasn't a thing where people were like, cancel him or whatever. But so he goes fully into just like how he was at a concert, and like you really kind of forget almost that it's Aziz talking and not him, because he's really good at, and he's obviously not doing like a tried and true impression, you know what I mean? He's not like an impressionist, but I think that's what's so good about the bit is like he does his own version of who R. Kelly is, which is so funny, and just the way he like sings the things and stuff, it's just hilarious to me.
Yeah, like he really captures the spirit of R. Kelly without impersonating the voice. And the concert he describes sounds insane. It just sounds so 100%. Over the top.
It's like him at the height of what he was, like all the lights and all the things. Just sounds crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting that and the Kanye bits. I mean, it was 2010. It was a different time in a lot of ways. Like, there's stuff that he does in this album he wouldn't do today. Like, and he even talks about that. Like, and right now he's sort of like, well, that R. Kelly thing, like, 2019, 9 years later, he's just like, yeah, that's and he sort of discusses that, but yeah, like it's just it just is like I'm enthralled by it. Like even now it's like it's still funny. It kind of reminds me a bit of the crazy that and the Kanye West stories remind me of the Dave Chappelle Prince story with the basketball and pancakes. Like just. It's so bonkers, but it's so 100% true just by the nature of the bonkersness.
Yes, 100% that you're almost so bought in because you're like, this is so ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things I also find really great is like, how he talks about his cousins Darwish and Harris. There's this like, it's, and I mean, again, like in right now, he kind of goes back and he's like, I wouldn't have made those jokes now. And it did impact Harris to the point he became a gym rat in a lot of ways. But it's clearly like I'm an older brother, and I teased my brother because I loved him so much. And I mean, I wouldn't do it to anybody else, but it kind of had that sort of energy to it where it's like, oh, he's being a nightmare, but it's because he loves Harris so much that he's sneaking into his school Facebook
Yeah, which is so
group
funny.
kind
I
of
think
thing.
that's also like the trouble sometimes with being a comic is you're taking these stories from your life and in some ways you're forgetting like, oh, these are about like real people obviously in my life and how does it affect them and well, how much can I say
Yeah.
about them? Because yeah, you're a lot of times you're just leading with the comedy of it all and then you're like, oh, wait a second. Yeah.
And what I guess, and also, it's one thing when you're like in a comedy club in New York or LA telling these jokes. It's another thing when you're on a stage recording an album and a
Yes,
special.
100%.
It's like completely different
Yeah.
stage there.
Putting it out in the world is
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Now, have you ever had like in the Kanye West story, he jokes about how like Kanye was like, tell some jokes, tell some jokes. Have you ever had anybody do that to you or like, oh, tell us one of your jokes?
That did crack me up because I feel like that is the tough part about comedy all the time. It seems in theory that it's obviously just a person standing there with a mic, like telling jokes. But I've always said there are ways that to like do things that make it less make the comedy less great in a sense of like, every comic has a story of having to perform in like a grocery store or like a bar show or where there's like a noise happening or there's a game playing on the TV and it's so funny because I have had people will meet you, they'll be like, oh, you're a comedian, tell me a joke or whatever, and you are like, it is 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, you are not gonna laugh. You know what I mean? And I get it in theory, people are like, oh yeah, you can laugh anywhere, and a really great comic, you can get people to laugh, but there are some circumstances where you're like, you don't even know, like the odds are stacked against me and everything I say can and will be used against me later. Yeah, those are like nightmare. He was really true. It's like a nightmare story. Even just the way he was describing it, because it has been a while since I've listened to this album, since like I first began comedy, and just I think it's funny because before I didn't even think about that, and now as a comedian, I'm like, that sounds like my worst nightmare, like 100%.
Just being in Kanye's living room and like having him just be intensely like, you got to tell jokes,
yes.
you got to tell jokes.
Nate Bargatze always has this quote, which I love, which is my favorite. I think it's so true, which he always says, like, if you are not aware of comedy happening or you didn't know there was going to be comedy, it just sounds like a mean speech. And I think and it's really true. Like, if you just show up somewhere and somebody's like, oh, this person's now going to perform comedy, there is something where your brain's like, okay. And it just sounds insane.
Yeah, that's why it's like whenever you go to do an open mic where it's in one of those places where it's like, a restaurant, most of the time, then like, okay, well, now we're going to have comedy over here. If you can get any laughs from that audience, that is a miracle. That's how you know it's flipping gold.
That is really true. That is how you know it's like a good joke. Like one of my very first open mics was literally in a grocery store where they were like, it was, if you can imagine, it was like basically kind of like a Costco food court type situation where it was like the groceries were next to you and then people were like sitting eating their dinner, and it just was a nightmare. And you're like, if you can get any sort of laugh. So I'm like, just the fact that he said people were laughing in that living room, I'm like, more power to them, because I can imagine that going south so quick.
I know. I made the mistake of letting my coworkers in my day job know that this is what I do for my free time, and now they're like, "Oh, we got this auction coming up. Do you want to host this?" And I'm like, "No, I get paid for this." I'm not
100%. That's also the thing. If people are like, "Oh, you do funny, let's just do it here," and you're like, "Wait a second, hold on, no."
Now, one of the things he does talk about is like meeting famous people and like MIA and stuff like that. Have you ever had any of those instances where you being at work or just met somebody where you're just like, oh crap, like just completely overwhelmed or surprised by and no need to like spill tea or anything like that, but just like anybody that where that's been sort of like wild
It's always
experience for
funny
you?
because I always think like you never know, even if you know yourself, you never know how you're going to react or how other people are going to react in those situations, which is so funny. Like, I'll always meet people and
Hmm.
always be the people I don't think, or like someone from my childhood who, like, the Jonas Brothers came to work once because they were doing the musical guest, and I was just like enamored with the Jonas Brothers because I was like, this is insane. It's crazy that they're here, which is
Yeah.
awesome. But yeah, like it's funny because I went to the Emmys with my mom this last year, and there was somebody who she was a fan of who was walking down the aisle. I don't remember who it was. It was someone that she obviously knew from like TV that she had watched a lot. And even just
Hmm.
instinctually without meaning, she like lifted her hand to like wave and say hi just because you think you know people in a weird, it is weird. That's what I've learned. It's weird how much just because you spent time like watching somebody's stuff or listening to their music or whatever in your brain, you're like, oh, we're best friends. And it's like, actually,
Yeah.
you are not, which is always crazy. But yeah, I've had my moments. Austin Butler, the guy who did Elvis was last year.
Hmm.
He was someone who I was surprised that I was like enamored with because before I was like, he's cool, he seems fine, and then he was like so charming and kind. I felt like that I went to go give him a note once, and he like listened intently and put his hand on my shoulder, and I was like, I think we're in love. I think that's how this works. So yeah, so you
Yeah,
never know
yeah.
who it's gonna be.
Yeah, it's your mom waving. It kind of I do another podcast where we talk about comic books, and we were talking about this comic book, The Max, which is set in the '90s, and it was right around when the issue came out around when Cheers was canceled. And there's this little monologue about how like these people are dead because it's before the era of PVRs and the internet and parasocial relationships
Yeah.
and all of that. But it's true. Like these are people, especially when we were kids. Like the Jonas Brothers. These are people you're inviting into your life. You're sharing these intimate moments with on so many
Yeah.
levels, and they're ingrained in the culture and the moment and the time of your growing up. So yeah, I mean, as simple as like a sitcom character or something
Yes,
like
and
that can really
yeah,
be
you don't
important.
think about it as much, and then you meet them, and you're like, "Oh, you mean everything to me."
my wife went to a New Kids concert a few years ago, and she's not generally, she's always like, yeah, okay, they're performers,
Yeah.
they're doing their job. She's pretty chill. And then she was in the audience, and her friend got really good tickets, so
Uh-huh.
they were on the floor, and then just up behind her, Donnie came out of the floor, and she lost her mind. She just utterly lost. Like she was on like a metal folding chair, just screaming, "Donnie!" And she's like, "I don't know what happened. It just overcame me. I was just
Yeah,
lost in the
that's so
moment."
funny. That's hilarious. I love that. Was there video proof of it? Oh,
No, I wish, because I wasn't. I obviously
yes.
wasn't there. Like my only encounter, I'm like an old crusty goth guy, so my only encounter with New Kids was like when they were wearing a Bauhaus shirt
Yeah.
back in the music video. So I'm like, they're not for me. My sister, yeah, she was into them,
No,
but
that's
no.
hilarious.
Uh, yeah. But now another thing that I really enjoy about this album is actually the Randy bit at the
Yeah.
end. Like you don't get encores often enough in comedy, but so that just kind of felt like an encore where he's like adding this extra bit onto the end. But I mean, it's obviously a character, and it's just such a creature of that moment in comedy with like that sort of call and response kind of thing going on. But it's just like it's so like such an over the top impersonation of like that raunchy comedy
Yes.
style. It was, and we've all seen that guy at the mic or at the show where it's just like, Okay, we got to listen to his sex stories for like the next 10 minutes.
100%. What I loved about that though too was it felt like I love anything where it feels like a time capsule, like you captured a moment in time, because I don't actually really remember that film and I don't remember that character at all. And so it's one of those things where I'm like, to be able to work that out in like clubs or theaters or whatever, it obviously had to be like huge at the time, and people were like, we know what you're talking about, we love this kind of a thing. And so it really did feel like it captured like a moment in time that has never existed. Like it's also one of those bits where if he went out and did that now, people would just be so confused, or like, so much of it couldn't exist. And also it was interesting too, because we're in a time where like comedy movies are less, are fewer and farther between. And so it also was like, there was a time where everybody watched a movie and everybody had seen it. That's crazy. What a novel idea.
And I mean, I love the way he's able to tag jokes is just so brilliant. Like there's like a bunch of jokes, and like the Randy one, they're very obvious because it's like, the Yoopsk. And like just that had me laughing so hard. And fair trade, you must be this tall. Like these are just like, this is like an exclamation mark on every punchline, just because it's just like adding another boost. But it's all throughout there. He's so good at knowing when to just like add that little extra juice and what will do it.
100%, which is so cool.
Yeah. Like do you have any like tricks for when you're trying to find a tag or something to like just add that little bit of extra funny?
What I love about him too, that he does to like find those things, is like the more you do comedy, the looser you become, and the more fun you're having. When you're loose, the better it is to like write jokes or come up with things on the fly for that. And so listening to him always reminds me, and I always have to remember, like, as long as you stay loose and you're having fun, that's when those like little extra tags come and those little extra things. It's when you're trying to be too precious or too word perfect, I think, is what goes against it. And you're like, I have to think of a tag for this. But like staying loose, and you can tell so much of his comedy. That's why I've always really liked him too, is so much of his comedy just comes from like fun. And like, you probably know too, is like, when you're around a ton of comedians or you're doing a bunch of shows, a lot of times it sometimes feels like, oh, everybody has a bit on this thing. Like when the Epstein list dropped, it was like, everybody has a bit on this. Everybody has a bit on this, or everyone has a take on this. And the thing that I like about his comedy and listening to it is like, nobody has a take on Cold Stone Creamery sizing. You know what I mean? Like, like nobody has a take on like the random thing on Craigslist, and like that whole bit, which was hilarious. Like it's all so random, but all like things we all think about. And I just love his material because it's so original, where you're like, nobody was talking about that. Like you don't have to worry about crossover, because nobody is sitting at home being like, actually, you know what? It's really crazy.
Yeah, like and it's like it's observational humor, but it's like not the big kind of stuff that's like the big like, what's the deal with airplane food kind of observational, but it's much more personal in his life, and like you said, it's there's no overlap because he's the only person with his life, and then like like you bring up the Craigslist bit. I mean, it's like it's. And that also, there's like a lot because of that. There's so many moments that are very of 2010 or of the early aughts. Craigslist. You've got like MTV when they were still creating original programming.
100%.
I forgot. Yeah, I forgot that he was on Human Giant. I forgot about that show until like listening to this. I'm like, oh yeah, like him and Rob Hewell and Paul Scheer, and that like. And then going back and rethinking about that trio is such a wild, like collaborative group. I mean, it's like, but
it's just like comedy has become, or pop culture, I think, has become so niche too, because of like social media and like everybody's paying attention to their own whatever they're interested in. And so I also felt like it was kind of cool because you're right, it's like a whole look at like what we were all consuming as a culture. There was like things where it's like everybody in the room knows what you're talking about because we're all watching MTV and we're all being like, what is happening? Or we're all doing this, we're all talking about Craigslist right now. And I thought that was really cool too, because I just feel like that doesn't exist as much anymore. There's not as many things that we all are consuming at the same time.
Yeah. And I think, it's on that thread, like, I mean, people, like a lot of people go on about cancel culture and like comedians like, oh, it's so hard to be funny now. And it's like, it's not. You just need to know the room. Yeah. And I think that's harder now because of this, because we're so fragmented and everything's so niche.
It's like you need to know the room, but then also, and I say this a lot to comics too, is like you need to, a lot of those like tougher subjects to cover. Like I feel like some of the comedians come out of the gate and they're like, I want to do what Bill Burr is doing and I want to do what Louis C.K. is doing. And it's like, it took them 30 years to do what they're doing and to walk that tightrope in a way where you know how to get people on your side and you know how to like, you can talk about anything, but you have to talk about it well. And I feel like that's what some people don't do correctly. It's like, if you're not getting laughs, then that's really on the way you wrote the material and how not really everybody else. It's just like, you just got to write it well and perform it great.
And he goes so dark so often in this album. And I think this kind of speaks to what you're saying there about walking that rope. He goes dark in ways that like, there are jokes that I would never, ever in a million years consider making, not just because they're not my style, but just like the subject matter. I'm like, how did you find the funny there? Like, how did you, but he does it. And it's like, and it's in a way where it doesn't feel like, just edgelordy or cruel. It's just this finding the silly in a way that I'm just like so mind blowing.
It's not even like, shock value. It's literally, and I think a lot of those things he does are genuinely things people are thinking, like him talking about like the kid's dad leaving him with him. And it's just like, you're right. Like he is a grown man at a dinosaur museum talking to a kid. And obviously his intentions were fine, but like just the fact that somebody's dad would be like, keep talking to your friend is insane. And it's funny because it's like, for him to even draw that and be like, if I was somebody who had bad intentions, like your dad doesn't care about you. That's like one of the funniest bits. It's hilarious.
Yeah. And again, another one where he knows how to tag it, like that little. I won't say it on here because I don't feel comfortable even saying the tag, but it's just like I'm like, that is hilarious. That is like the slam dunk of that bit, where it's just like it's exactly what it needed just to take it to the next level.
It's great.
And I love. And another thing too I love is just like how he involves the people in his life, like his roommate, his Craigslist roommate bit, where it's like, and we've all had a crappy roommate. It's universal but specific at the same time, because it's like we've all had that crappy roommate, but this is how his crappy roommate was. Which is just,
it's great. He really finds a way, which I love, to fully bring you in and go, this is my worldview and this is insane. And even the guy just like when he says like taking tuna shots and like you can visualize that and you're like, that is so gross. To live with somebody who thinks that's okay is crazy.
And I'm imagining My Heart Will Go On is the flautist's version of Wonderwall, like just the song they break out when everybody is like, oh, look at me, I'm really good at this.
100%. That's exactly what it is. It's so fun.
Now, one of the things I do like too about just Aziz in general is he's not complacent in his comedy. Like he does sort of grow from it, because like a lot of these threads he did return to in Right Now, and how, some of the stuff that he's done over his career is like, it's not the same time, which just comes back to what you're saying about it being a time capsule, and is there any any joke that you look of your own that you look back on and go, not that it was like, oh, I couldn't tell this today, but like, oh, that was really me in that moment. Like that was my life in a nutshell in that one joke
that I can't tell anymore, or
oh no, not that you necessarily can't tell, just that it's just like that, like, joke that sums up you in that moment there. Like I have a joke about, getting older and just the wheels coming off of the car, as it were. But like, did you have any jokes like that? Whereas like, I'd imagine like his like the Randy stuff being that time capsule.
Yes.
Kind of
I have kind of both of what I was saying too, is a joke that I really like and felt like was a time capsule, but also for some reason stopped working. And not even because it was like bad, but it might just the way I approach it now. But I had a joke about how the reason that I'm single is because I always try to date like nice and creative guys, except for nice and creative guys are into guys, and which I always love too. And then I think people at a certain point, it's one of those things that I probably have to rewrite just to help people understand that I'm talking about it's a positive thing. But I always like that because it is true. I always like the artistic, like creator type, but that's always sometimes the most flaky version of men.
It's interesting, like how just things shift. Like a joke that works for years. I mean, it's kind of like, look at Seinfeld. He's like, oh, well, I told this joke and they didn't laugh. I'm like, yeah, because you're telling it to 20-year-olds in 2020, not 20-year-olds in 1989. They're different creatures.
Yeah. And also, I think sometimes the problem lies within you, because I think the tough part about comedy and what you were just saying is sometimes there's a joke that you have that represents you at a certain time in your life, and then you kind of try to tell it years later or whatever. And it's always fascinating to me. The audience can kind of feel if it's not true to you, or if there's like a disconnect, or you're not really connected with the emotions of that joke anymore, and you're just kind of telling it just to tell it or to like fill time. That's the most interesting thing, is where you're like, oh yeah, I don't feel that way anymore, but I'm still saying these words. And sometimes jokes just don't work anymore because they're like, we know you don't feel that way because we didn't feel it when you said it. So
yeah. It's like comedy and in general, and stand up in I find in specific, is such an intimate give and take. Like, sketch is incredible and it is one thing. Improv is incredible and it's a different thing. But of the sort of variations, I find that, stand up, because you're connecting in such a personal way, you're giving so much more, but you're also taking that much more from the audience in a lot of ways.
100%. That's absolutely true. It's like a one-sided conversation, but it is a conversation. That's why it's the hardest if like a crowd isn't going along with you, because you're like, oh, now it feels like I'm just talking to nobody.
Yeah, like I saw Chris Redd a couple of years back at Comedy Bar in Toronto, which is, I'd say it's the closest thing that Toronto has to the Cellar kind of thing. Like it's where like the best comedians go, and it's not a corporate kind of environment. It's very like indie kind of vibe. And it was just that. It was like, it felt like I was sitting in a room with a guy who's talking to me, not, and even though there was like 100 other people crammed around us, and like, I have never experienced heckling. I guess I'm blessed and cursed in that regard, because I'm kind of curious how I handle it when it happens. But I've always had very nice rooms who understand the rules. But like, and he had like one of those the worst hecklers, the nice hecklers, the kind of that are just like super fans. And he just engaged with them in a way that just like de-escalated and kept the momentum going, and was just, so it's like, it's just a wild sort of different kind of relationship that I don't think people outside of comedy really understand.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Well, if people wanted to see you perform, check out where you're going to be, see what projects you're working on, where can they look to find that?
I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Very Vannessa with 2 N's in Vannessa. And then that's also my website is www.veryvannessa.com. So yeah, you can check me out there.
Terrific. Well, thank you for chatting with us about Aziz Ansari today and his album, Intimate Moments for a Sensual Evening. And, if you ever want to come back, we'd love to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. This was so fun.
You've been listening to Comedy Album Book Club, a Far From Here Comedy and ShowbizMonkeys.com co-production. Music today was performed and produced by Glenn Bouchon, Tim Matthews, Edith Falkenberg, and Jim Spruill, also known as the Something Something Quartet. Thanks for listening and tune in next week to Comedy Album Book Club.